I was supposed to be out of town on a business trip. But when I heard Anna had dinner plans tonight, I decided to come home early. I didn't tell her. Anna has a bad stomach, ulcers, and lately, the pain's been getting worse. I wanted to give her a surprise, but ended up giving myself a surprise. I unlocked the front door. The lights were on, Anna was already home. But when I called her name, no one answered. All I could hear was the hum of a hair dryer coming from the bathroom. I followed the sound, casually at first, until I reached the doorway. And froze. Anna is not alone. There was a man in the bathroom with her. A complete stranger. But it wasn't just that, he was wearing something eerily familiar. The clothes. They were the exact ones Anna had bought for me a few weeks ago. I remember telling her they didn't suit me. She wasn't happy about it. Said, "Forget it, if you don't want to wear them." As if I ever meant that. I always appreciated the way she cared for me, never once took it for granted. I wore everything she gave me. But now, seeing those clothes on someone else. They fit him better than they ever fit me. That thought hit me harder than I expected. My hand clenched involuntarily at my side. The man stood facing Anna, his hair still damp. She was on her tiptoes, gently holding the dryer. "Tilt your head a little," she said softly. Then she laughed. "You're too tall." He chuckled under his breath and obediently lowered his head so she could reach. Through the half-length mirror, I saw a faint smile on Anna's face. Her mouth corners were upturned and her eyes were gentle. Yes, gentle. I did see a tenderness in Anna, a tenderness she had never shown to me. It was really dazzling. Anna and I had been together for 5 years, from the day we met to the day we got married. She's always been reserved. Distant with others, distant with me. Nothing ever seemed to rattle her. Nothing ever really lit her up either. Sure, she smiled sometimes, but it never reached her eyes. I never made much of it. Everyone has their own temperament. I chose her, and that meant choosing all of her, the good and the bad. At least, I used to believe that she was different with me. Special. But now, it felt like I was no different from anyone else. Leaning against the doorframe, my head was a mess, chaotic, spinning. But I forced myself to pull it together fast. I knocked lightly on the open door. "Well, sorry to interrupt," I said, my voice steady. The moment shattered. The little world they'd built between them cracked open, just like that. Both of them froze, only a few feet away from me. The man turned first, startled, his eyes landing on me, confused at first, then understanding. He arched a brow, smirked, and gave me a slow, deliberate smile, one laced with mockery. Anna, on the other hand, was clearly caught off guard. She flinched at the sound of my voice and nearly lost her balance. She let out a gasp, and the man instinctively reached out to steady her, pulling her into his arms. I'd raised my hand without thinking, maybe to stop her fall, maybe out of reflex. But now it just hung awkwardly in the air, useless. Anna frowned at me. "Why are you home early?" I lowered my hand and crossed my arms. "Why? Did I interrupt something special? So tell me, have you two already slept together, or were you just getting started?" Her face darkened immediately. "George, what the hell are you talking about?" I let my suitcase drop to the floor with a loud thud. "Why don't you take a good look at what you're doing? Just the two of you, locked in a bathroom? That's not exactly innocent, is it? George." She looked furious now, eyes blazing. The guy, who'd been standing there watching the whole thing like it was none of his business, suddenly stepped forward and pulled Anna behind him protectively. "George, right?" he said. "You've got it all wrong. There's nothing going on between Anna and me. We're just friends. And honestly, the way you're talking about your wife, it's out of line." His tone was calm, but judgmental, like I was the one being disrespectful. I let out a low chuckle. "If you're gonna say crap like that, maybe let go of my wife's hand first. Soft? Nice to touch? Having a good time?" His expression shifted instantly. "If you've got a problem with me, Mr. George, say it to my face. But don't take it out on Anna." I sneered. "What, too vulgar for you? Funny, you don't say those words, but you sure don't mind doing the actions. You." He took a step toward me, fists clenched, but Anna reached back and yanked him to a stop. "Enough. Both of you, shut up." The guy looked at her, clearly irritated. "Seriously, Anna? You're just gonna let him talk about us like that?" I scoffed. What, do you want her to scold me? Maybe she'll hit me while she's doing it? That would really help your situation, wouldn't it? Especially since she's still legally my wife. Or hey, if you're both feeling bold, why not just admit it? Go ahead, tell me you're in love. I'm a generous guy, I'd be happy to get out of the way for true love. Shut up. Anna grabbed my arm and started pulling me toward the door. We need to talk. I didn't resist. As she dragged me out, I glanced back over my shoulder and offered the man a smile. Make yourself at home. The man stared at me, speechless. Anna dragged me into the bedroom. She slammed the door shut behind us. For someone who always kept her composure, she was visibly shaken, probably for the first time since I'd known her. I glanced at the bed. Perfectly made. Not a single crease. I let out a low, sarcastic click of my tongue. Guess I came home just in time. Looks like you two didn't make it to the bed yet. George, shut up. Her eyes were blazing. Do you have to say such disgusting things? You didn't used to be like this. I gave a short laugh. And what exactly should I be like? The kind of husband who stays silent while his wife fools around with another man? You really don't know me, Anna. I grew up on the kind of streets where chaos was normal. This is the real me. Surprise. She inhaled sharply, trying to steady herself. George, I don't want to argue with you. We can talk about this later. He's an old friend from college. He just got back from overseas and doesn't have a place to stay yet. I was just letting him crash here for the night. Don't twist it into something it's not. I stared at her. That's what you wanted to tell me? She didn't respond. Just silence. Cold, heavy silence. And yeah, pretending I wasn't disappointed would have been a lie. The only reason I came in here was because I still had some hope, some ridiculous, desperate hope that she'd explain things in a way that made sense. That she'd show she still cared. But clearly, that hope was mine alone. Got it. He's staying here. Sure. Do whatever the hell you want. I turned to leave. Anna grabbed my wrist. Where are you going? I looked at her, stunned. What, you want the three of us to sleep together now? Sorry, I can't do it. Her grip suddenly tightened, her nails digging hard into my skin. It hurt, bad. George, what the hell is wrong with you? I yanked my arm free. Me? What's wrong with me? Are you even listening to yourself? Do you even realize what you're doing right now? Anna, stop disgusting me, dot. I pulled the door open and walked out. I pulled the door open and stepped out. The man had already changed out of the pajamas, now he stood there in a crisp suit, polished and composed, trying his best to look respectable. He gave Anna a strained smile, one that practically screamed heartbreak. Anna, I should probably head out, he said softly. I don't want to cause any more trouble. Then he turned to me. Mr. George, you've really misunderstood the situation. Here, these are your pajamas. I should return them. He held them out to me. Just as he let go, I took a step back. The clothes slipped from his hand and dropped to the floor. Trash belongs in the trash can, I said coldly. What the hell makes you think I'd take it back? Anna's head snapped up, her eyes locked on mine, stormy, unreadable. Then, out of nowhere, she spoke. Don't go, she said. Stay here. The man's eyes lit up with surprise. Still, he hesitated. I don't know if that's such a good idea, you and Mr. George. You don't need to worry about that, Anna cut him off sharply. I said stay, so stay. Unless you'd prefer to book a hotel room, but can you accept the hotel environment? He gave a heavy sigh and smiled faintly. You always did know me best. The way they talked, so casually, like I wasn't even in the room, made my skin crawl. I didn't want to hear another word. Without saying anything, I picked up my suitcase and walked out without looking back. I hurried down the stairs, my footsteps heavy and uneven. The cold wind hit me as soon as I stepped outside, and a shiver ran through me. Then came the nausea, sharp and overwhelming. I doubled over, gagging, but nothing came up. Just dry heaves and a bitter taste in my throat. Was it sadness? Rage? Disappointment? Humiliation? I couldn't even tell anymore. The emotions twisted together so tightly I couldn't separate one from the next. All I knew was, I was exhausted. Physically, mentally, emotionally drained. The calm I'd forced myself to wear like armor cracked apart all at once. It was insane. All of it. I never imagined Anna would be capable of something like this. Others say, men become bad when they have money, and the same is true for women. We should be careful and cautious and be on guard. I never took it seriously. Maybe I should have. But I trusted Anna. Even if things between us had soured, even if we were heading toward the end, I still believed we'd part ways with dignity. Not because of love, but because of who she was, or at least who I thought she was. But reality had a cruel way of proving you wrong. Anna, what the hell are you doing? And that guy, who the hell is he really? Still clutching that question, I went back to the old place, our first home. I remembered there was a photo album tucked away in the storage closet. It was a birthday gift someone had given Anna back in college. The whole album was filled with pictures, some of just her, others with friends, classmates, people from her past. It was a thoughtful gift, meticulously put together, clearly done with care. I remember asking her who gave it to her. She said, a college friend. Does he like you? Because really, no one puts in that kind of effort unless they care more than they're letting on. Anna hadn't denied it. She just nodded. And because of her honesty, I didn't ask any further questions. After all, it's not the past that cuts the deepest. It's the way someone treats you in the present. The old place wasn't far, just a 20-minute drive. Compared to the new house, I'd always preferred this one. Anna and I had lived here for 2.5 years before we moved after getting married. Sometimes, when I was feeling low, I'd come back here. It was the one place that still made me feel calm. But today, walking through that front door, there was no peace, only a gnawing bitterness I couldn't shake. I headed straight for the storage room and found the photo album almost immediately. The photos inside showed a much younger Anna, still serious, still reserved, but with a certain youthful energy around her eyes, a quiet spark that time hadn't yet dimmed. Most of the shots looked like they'd been taken secretly, candid side profiles, moments stolen from the edges of ordinary days. There were only a few direct shots, and one of them stood out, Anna in her cap and gown. Her graduation photo. There were photos of her with different people, some girls, some guys. I flipped through them one by one, taking my time. Then my hand stopped. One picture didn't look like the rest. It was a close shot, two people standing side by side, their arms pressed tightly together. The guy was laughing, his body leaning slightly toward her. Anna wasn't smiling, but her hand was gripping the sleeve of his shirt so tightly it left visible wrinkles in the fabric. His face had changed a little since then, but there was no mistaking it. It was him. On the back of the photo, two names were written in neat handwriting, Anna and Henry. There is a hand-painted little heart right between the two names. I was woken by the sound of construction from the floor above. I hadn't slept well, not really. It was one of those nights where your body rests, but your mind never shuts off. A shallow, restless kind of sleep. When I finally opened my eyes, my head was still foggy, my thoughts sluggish. It took me a moment to remember where I was. The old house. I'd crashed on the couch last night, it was late, and I didn't have the energy to go anywhere else. Across the room, not far from where I lay, someone was sitting quietly, watching me. Her gaze was impossible to ignore. Anna. I wasn't surprised to see her there. I remembered a time we'd had a fight, I'd stormed off without a word. I came here, to this house, to cool off. She found me within an hour. I asked her, how'd you know I was here? She'd answered simply, where else would you go? She knew I had nowhere else. I grew up an orphan, this place, this life, this home, it was all because of her. Someone once asked her why she never sold this old house. She said, let's keep it. Just in case someone needs a place to hide when they're upset. My feelings for Anna have always been complicated. There's love. There's gratitude. I really believed we could live out our lives in quiet simplicity, nothing dramatic, just steady, ordinary years. I sighed and made my way to the bathroom to freshen up. When I came out, I saw she'd brought breakfast. I didn't say much, just sat down and ate, like it was any other day. When I finished, I looked up at her. He's Henry, right? Your ex? The photo album was still sitting nearby. Neither of us was dumb enough to pretend otherwise. Anna didn't try to deny it. Yeah, she said. I looked straight at her. Anna, what the hell are you doing? You bring your ex into our home, let him wear my pajamas, blow dry his hair, what is this? Some kind of live-action reunion special? Old flames, still burning? She met my gaze, steady. Believe it or not, nothing happened between me and him. I shook my head. Yeah. I don't believe you. Her jaw tightened, her expression hardening. After a pause, she rubbed her temples and pulled out 2 receipts, placing them on the table in front of me. He slept at the house last night. I stayed at a hotel. Here's proof. If that's not enough, I can get the security footage. Nothing happened, George. That's the truth. I didn't even glance at the receipts. If she had the guts to put them in front of me, they were probably legit. But that wasn't the point. He stayed at our place, and you stayed in a hotel? I said, staring at her. That's what I don't get, Anna. What kind of logic is that? Anna replied, he's a light sleeper. Has OCD. He can't handle staying in hotels. I let out a sharp laugh. He told you that? Or are you just naturally that considerate? George, stop, she snapped, her eyes narrowing. If you want to talk, talk like a normal person. Don't do this. But everything had been building up inside me for too long. I'd reached my limit. I am trying to talk, Anna. But did you talk to me like a normal person? A light sleeper? OCD? Can't stay in hotels? What, is he royalty now? My voice was rising. Tell me, every time I traveled for work and stayed in hotel rooms, did you ever ask if I slept well? Did you ever give a damn? Or is Henry just that special to you? Her face changed instantly, like I'd hit a nerve. She shot to her feet. I moved out. I told you nothing happened. What more do you want from me? The words hit me like a slap. I felt dizzy, nauseous again. I had to grip the table to stay steady. And then, quietly but firmly, I said, I want a divorce. Anna's expression twisted. Shut up, George. Take that back, right now. Her voice shook with fury, her teeth clenched so tightly it looked like it hurt to speak. I held her gaze, cold and steady. She closed her eyes and clenched her fists. When she opened them again, all the emotion was gone, she'd snapped right back into control. You want a divorce, she said flatly. Not happening. And just like that, Anna and I slipped into a cold war. I stayed at the old house. I didn't reach out to her, and she didn't reach out to me. I had no idea what was going through her head. As for me, I was waiting. Waiting until I could calm down enough to handle things with a clear mind, efficiently, decisively. Then one day, I got a call from her assistant, Janet. George, did you and Ms. Anna have a fight? Janet and I went to college together. Smart, capable, sharp. Back then, she struggled to land a decent job. I recommended her to Anna, and she'd been working under her ever since, doing well, actually. Anna trusted her, and she'd always been grateful to me for that. We kept in touch over the years, but this was the first time she'd ever brought up anything about Anna. What's going on? I asked. There was a pause on the line. Then she said, cautiously, Ms. Anna had a dinner event tonight. She drank quite a bit. I was going to call you to pick her up, but a man showed up instead. Some stranger. He took her, drove off in her car. My chest tightened for a moment, but I didn't let it show. I paused, then sent her a photo of Henry. Was it him? Yes, Janet said quickly, her voice edged with concern. George, are you okay? I let out a quiet laugh. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. If there was any lingering doubt about what needed to happen, this just sealed it. Looks like it's time to put the divorce on the table, no more delays. The longer this drags out, the bigger fool I become. I've always been a man of action. The next morning, first thing, I contacted a lawyer and had a divorce agreement drafted. Anna and I had always kept our finances separate, this was just a formality. When I showed up at the office and she caught sight of me, she froze for a second. But she quickly pulled herself together, her face turning blank, unreadable. This is a workplace, she said coolly. If you have something to say, save it for home. Home, sure, but not later. Not today. I set the divorce papers down on her desk. Sign it. It's early, we've got time to swing by the courthouse. Anna stared at the document for a long time. This is why you came to see me, she asked. I didn't even bother answering. The answer was obvious. Without another word, Anna tore the agreement in half. I said I would not divorce. I acted like I didn't hear her and pulled out a second copy. She ripped that one too. So I pulled out a third. She tore it again. And so it went. Paper after paper. Me placing them down, her tearing them apart. By the time we hit the 12th copy, her expression had turned stormy, furious and dark. "George," she said through gritted teeth, "are you sure about this?" I gave a short, cold laugh. What, did she think I was here for fun? Finally, she slapped the document down on the desk and signed her name with a sharp flick of her pen. "Let's go to court." We each drove separately and met at the courthouse. We got lucky, there weren't many people that day, so it didn't take long for our number to be called. The staff looked up at us. "You've both made up your minds?" I nodded. "Yes." Anna's eyes fell on me. "What about you? Have you made up your mind?" The moment I looked at her, she looked away. She said coldly, "I have made up my mind." "Okay, I will register for you first, and you can come back to get the divorce certificate in a month." Watching the staff working with their heads down, I finally let go of the breath I had been holding. Just then, Anna spoke. "Wait." The staff paused. "What's wrong?" Anna turned to me. "George, are you absolutely sure you want this divorce?" "I'm sure." She shot to her feet so fast that her chair toppled over behind her with a loud bang. "Damn it, George, you're really something." Without another word, she stormed out of the room. "What's going on?" the staff asked, confused. I didn't have an answer, I was just as thrown as everyone else. All I could do was run after her. "Anna! Stop right there. Anna!" She didn't slow down, didn't even flinch. It was like she couldn't hear me at all. I caught up to her, grabbed her arm. "What the hell is this supposed to mean?" She spun around and slapped me, hard. I stood there, stunned, my cheeks stinging. "I'll say this one last time," she said, her voice trembling with fury. "I'm not getting a divorce." And just like that, the fire in me ignited. What the hell is that supposed to mean? You think this is a joke? You think I'm bluffing? Anna took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. "George, how long are you planning to keep up this tantrum? You're blowing up our marriage over something that doesn't even exist. Running away, demanding a divorce, what is this, some kind of dramatic performance? You really have to be this petty? Do you know that I am very tired of you doing this?" I stared at her in silence. "I'm not throwing a tantrum, Anna. I mean it. I want a divorce." "Why?" she asked, confused and visibly frustrated. "Just because of Henry? There's nothing going on between us, nothing. Why can't you believe me?" "How can I believe that?" I snapped. "Tell me, where is Henry staying right now? Somewhere you arranged for him? Does he even have a car, or did you give him one too? Why was he the one who came to pick you up after you got drunk? And after he picked you up, where did you go? What happened next?" I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Honestly, we don't even need to dig that deep. Just that one night, if I hadn't come home early, what would have happened between the two of you?" "Nothing," she nearly shouted. "I already had a hotel booked, it was all part of my plan. If you don't believe me, you can ask." "I don't believe you," I cut in. It was the second time I'd said it. And this time, it carried the finality of a verdict. "Anna, I don't believe you. It doesn't matter what you say now, or what kind of evidence you throw in my face. I just don't believe you anymore." I paused, letting that truth settle between us. "I'm not trying to dissect what you did or didn't do. I don't care about the technicalities. The simple truth is, I've lost faith in you. That's it. If there's one thing I'm good at, it's cutting things off when they're no longer worth holding on to. That's the only reason I've made it this far. Life has never been kind to me. So I had to learn how to protect myself. I refuse to let anything drag me down, because no one's out there pulling me forward. I grew up an orphan. My mother didn't even want to have me. She found out she was pregnant after my father died in a car accident. I don't blame her. I understand. It was my grandparents who begged her to keep the baby. All they asked was that she give birth. They said they'd take care of everything after that. They even gave her everything my father had left behind, his inheritance, the settlement money from the accident. That was the deal. She got the money, she gave birth to me. So she gave birth, stayed long enough to recover, then took the money and walked out of my life. My grandparents raised me. As for my birth mother, I feel nothing. No love, no hatred, no longing. Nothing. Because those feelings don't help. They only hurt. So I let them go. Later, my grandparents passed away, one after the other. I was in middle school at the time, barely a teenager, and suddenly completely alone in the world. I grieved. I broke down. I missed them so much it nearly crushed me. But I gave myself a month. 1 month to feel everything, to let it burn through me. Then I got up, and moved forward. A few years later, someone offered me $100,000 for my grandparents' old house. I took the deal. Everyone called me a fool. Said I was being taken advantage of. Said it was a lowball offer, that I was getting robbed just because there was no adult left to speak for me. But that's exactly why I knew I couldn't hold on to that house. And if you can't protect something, you have to let it go. I needed the money. I had school to finish. I had to survive. So I sold the house, and left the only place I'd ever called home. And now, it's Anna. She didn't give me an explanation when it mattered, when I needed it most. Whatever she says now, it's too late. I won't believe a word of it. I don't want to live second-guessing everything, drowning in suspicion. I won't waste my life like that. Let's just get divorced, I told her. No need to turn this into a war. Her answer? Absolutely impossible. The more firmly I pushed for divorce, the more fiercely she pushed back. And that, more than anything, threw me off. I didn't understand her anymore. When negotiations went nowhere, I made a decision: I'd file for divorce through the courts. But what I didn't expect was how fast she retaliated. The day after I filed the lawsuit, Anna hit back hard, financially. She moved to sever every business tie between her company and mine. Full economic sanctions. I met Anna through business. Back then, I'd just graduated from college and was trying to build a startup with a few classmates. We were full of fire, young, ambitious, convinced we could move mountains. But reality hit harder than we ever expected. We had no funding, no connections. No one was willing to invest in us. Hell, most people wouldn't even give us a meeting, wouldn't hear us out, let alone believe in our vision. There were too many like us. Too many wide-eyed dreamers stepping into the world thinking passion alone would be enough. We were almost at the breaking point, ready to give up and find regular jobs, when a company finally reached out to us. They said they wanted to talk. It felt like a lifeline, like we'd finally caught a break. But it turned out, it was just another illusion. Just a piece of straw disguised as a rope. The woman in charge pulled me aside and said, "Stay with me for a year. Be mine, and I'll give you everything you want." I told her no without hesitation. But they didn't take rejection well. Things escalated. In the chaos, I grabbed a bottle and smashed it over one of their heads. They had me arrested. That same woman swore she'd bury me, that I'd rot in prison. I was ready for the worst. I'd already accepted it. And then Anna showed up. She handled it all effortlessly. Had the charges dropped, bailed me out, and sent people to our company to restart negotiations, real ones this time. I asked her, "Why did you help me?" She said, "Think of it as pity." Her pity, I accepted without pride or shame. Because the truth was, I was pitiful. And thanks to that so-called pity, our company finally found its footing. Because of her, our company started to grow. But now, she was using the company to control me. And I had to admit, she knew exactly where to hit. I went to Anna's office and asked, "What do you want?" She looked up at me, calm and composed. "Withdraw the divorce petition," she said. We stood there, staring each other down. She didn't raise her voice, didn't argue, just sat there with that quiet, unshakable stance that told me exactly where she stood. I let out a short laugh. "That's it?" "Sure. I'll drop it today." "Anything else?" My easy answer didn't seem to please her. Her brows pulled into a tight frown. After a pause, she asked, "When are you moving back?" "That's part of the deal too." Her lips pressed into a flat line. "Right. Message received." "Fine," I said. "I'll move back today." "Are you satisfied?" She tossed the pen on her desk. "Get out." The fake smile I'd kept on my face finally disappeared once I got in the car. I hated this feeling, being backed into a corner, held in someone else's grip. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Anna. No one gets to control me like that. I made a call on the spot. "Is everyone in the office?" "Good. Call a meeting, I'll be there soon." That meeting went on deep into the night, until past midnight. But it didn't go the way I'd hoped. I wanted to cut ties. Find a new partner. There's a whole market out there, it's not just Anna. If she could walk away from the table anytime she wanted, so could we. But the others didn't agree. They'd grown too comfortable, too cautious. Anna's terms were generous, almost too generous to walk away from. No matter how we ended things with her, it was clear, we'd take a hit. Their stance was simple, as long as Anna was still willing to work with us, she should be our first choice. I couldn't help but laugh at that. It seems that I am no longer on the same path with them. It was clear now, I needed to get out. But I couldn't leave just yet. I needed time to make sure that when I walked away, I'd walk away with what was rightfully mine. So, I moved back in. When I got home, Anna was still awake. She was sitting in the living room, laptop on her lap. The moment she saw me, she took off her glasses. "We need to talk," she said. I shut that down immediately. "I'm tired. Some other time." Her expression darkened. I ignored it and went straight to the guest room. I didn't know which room Henry had slept in that night. Didn't know what he touched, what he used. Didn't care. All I knew was, everything in this house felt wrong now. In the end, I grabbed a bedsheet and crashed on the couch. But when I woke up the next morning, there was a blanket draped over me. My face immediately hardened. Without a second thought, I grabbed it and threw it onto the floor. Anna was in the kitchen, frying eggs. I turned to her, my voice sharp. "Who told you to put a blanket on me?" She paused mid-movement, took a slow breath. Then, without looking at me, she said, "I changed all the sheets and covers. Everything's clean." I clenched my jaw. I feel like everything in this house, even the air, makes me sick. "George," she snapped, her voice tight with frustration. "You're being ridiculous. He stayed for one night. Nothing happened. How long are you planning to drag this out?" I let out a short, cold laugh. "Oh, I'm being ridiculous? Fine. Let's switch places. Imagine I brought a woman home, let her wear your pajamas, wrapped my arms around her while drying her hair, then told you it was nothing. You'd be cool with that, right?" Her eyes blazed with fury. "Don't you dare." I shook my head, my voice calm but laced with ice. "I wouldn't. Not because I can't, but because I actually have some damn self-respect. I don't do disgusting things like that." Anna and I parted on bad terms that morning. She dumped the breakfast straight into the trash, face cold and unreadable, then turned and walked back to her room. I didn't hold back either, slammed the door behind me so hard it echoed through the whole house. Just like that, we fell into another Cold War. I kept myself busy, out early, back late. Anna was just as busy. Days went by without us even crossing paths. During that time, I started meeting with people, quiet conversations, strategic negotiations, about selling off my shares. Naturally, the first choice should have been my own team, the people I built the company with. But their stance was clear. They weren't on my side. So if I wanted to protect my interests, I had to go outside. The only courtesy I extended was making sure I divided the shares, spread them out enough so that none of the new holders would have decision-making power. What they chose to do with the shares later, that'd be their problem, not mine. Everything went smoothly. One deal after another, money started flowing in. And just like that, I was out. They were furious. Stormed into my office, shouting, red-faced, ready to tear everything apart. It was ugly, desperate, and frankly, pathetic. "I gave you all a choice," I said calmly. "You didn't take it. Honestly, this might be better. Anna and I were bound to go up in flames eventually, at least now you won't get caught in the fallout. And don't act like you never thought about pushing me out yourselves." Their eyes darted away, guilt flickering behind forced indignation. "Don't be silly," one of them muttered. "We never thought of that." "Right," I cut in. "You didn't, because you were afraid of Anna. Because that's how it works, once the hunt is over, no one remembers the hound. And I was the hound. The company was settled now. The next chapter was settling things with Anna. But before I could make the first move, someone beat me to it. Henry found me. Said he wanted to talk. I agreed. The moment we sat down, Henry went straight in. "Why haven't you divorced her yet? George, do you have no self-respect? How long are you planning to keep clinging to Anna?" I actually laughed. "And who the hell are you to say that to me? Her lover? The affair partner? Has Anna even acknowledged you as anything? Because last I checked, she's been very clear, there's nothing going on between you two. You get that, right? You're not even qualified to be the affair partner. I gave him a slow once-over, top to bottom. Besides, it's not me who's refusing to leave, it's Anna. What does that say about you? This is all you've got? His face turned red with rage. You're lying. Anna would never, she doesn't even like you. If it weren't for... He froze mid-sentence. I narrowed my eyes. If it weren't for what? Henry hesitated, then smiled, smug, cocky, like he'd been holding something over my head this whole time. You've never wondered, he said, voice low and taunting. You and Anna, you're from two completely different worlds. You really think it was some magical coincidence that she showed up when she did? That she swooped in and saved you just because she felt sorry for you? God, George, you're even more naive than I thought. I stared at him. What are you getting at? He arched a brow. You really want to know? Then beg me for it. I stared at him silently for a beat, then let out a short, cold laugh. Then don't say a word. Hold it in. I'll survive. I stood and turned to leave. Henry was anxious. George, stop. I didn't even glance back. George. I was already at the door when he raised his voice behind me. Wait. Come back, I've got something to show you. I paused, smirked, and slowly turned around, strolling back to my seat with deliberate ease. Now that was more like it, the attitude of someone who actually wanted to talk. Henry's earlier bravado had vanished. He looked tense, face tight with frustration. Good. That was the energy I preferred. Without saying another word, he pulled something from his bag and slid it across the table. A photo. This, he said coldly, is Anna and her adoptive mother. I barely glanced at it at first, just a little girl, maybe 5 or 6, thin and frail. I wouldn't have even recognized her as Anna if he hadn't said it. But then I looked closer. And suddenly, everything in me went still. That woman's face, it stopped me cold. A long-buried image clawed its way out of my memory. I'd seen that woman before. Years ago, buried deep in the bottom drawer of my grandmother's old wardrobe, under a pile of clothes, there had been a notebook. Inside it, an old photo. 2 people in it. One was my father, long gone. The other was the woman who ran away after giving birth to me. My mother. I didn't know much about Anna's family. All I knew was that her parents had passed away. No siblings. No extended relatives. Like me, she was an orphan. The only difference was, she had money. I had nothing. Anna visited her parents' graves every now and then. I once offered to go with her, but she turned me down. No need, she said flatly. That simple phrase, no need, was enough to make me drop the idea of taking her to meet my grandparents. Sometimes I wondered if there was something wrong with the way we connected. But I never found an answer. I had no experience with relationships. No family guidance. No role models to follow. In the end, I could only tell myself, this is fine. Just let it be. That's how I spent 5 years with Anna. And now, Henry tells me those 5 years were nothing but a joke. He said Anna was a real orphan, the kind who grew up in an orphanage. But she got lucky. When she was 6, a wealthy couple adopted her. They never had children of their own, and they treated Anna like their own flesh and blood. Her adoptive mother, in particular, loved her deeply, no less than any biological mother would. Her adoptive father died of illness when she was 12. And 6 years ago, her adoptive mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She fought for 6 months, then passed away too. Before her adoptive mother died, Henry said, her adoptive mother told her something. She said she'd kept a secret all her life, she actually had a son. She regretted abandoning him. She begged Anna to find him, and take care of him. Henry paused, eyes fixed on me, his lips curling into a twisted smile. Want to guess who that son is? Back then, Anna and I were still in love, Henry said bitterly. Then out of nowhere, she broke up with me. Said she needed to fulfill her mother's dying wish. But why? She was my girlfriend, how could she just walk away like that? Just because of some promise to her mother? What about me? George, do you even realize how lucky you are? Your mother loved you until her last breath. She asked Anna to protect you. But what about me? Why did your family's story have to come at the cost of our love? I took the photo from Henry's hand. As I turned to leave, he called out, "George, you're going to divorce Anna, aren't you?" "I will," I said. "But are you sure you want to take back someone who threw you away like yesterday's trash?" "Anna, we need to talk." I'd asked her to meet me at home. She showed up half an hour late and sank into the couch, looking exhausted. "What is it?" she asked flatly. "Where should I even begin?" "Forget it, might as well get straight to the point." I placed the photo on the table in front of her. "So your adoptive mother was my biological mother?" Her hand froze mid-motion, fingers still pressing against her temple. "Who gave this to you?" she asked. I shook my head. "That's not important. Let's talk about something that actually does." "Henry," she muttered, slumping back into the couch. "Of course. He's the only one who's seen this photo." "So," I said, "do you have anything you want to say to me?" Silence. A long, heavy silence. Just when I thought she was going to sit there and say nothing at all, she finally spoke. And when she did, the words came slowly, layer by layer, peeling back a part of her I'd never seen before. "My adoptive mother was an incredible woman," she began. "She built her own cosmetics brand from the ground up. That's how she met my adoptive father. They fell in love. He couldn't have children, so she suggested they adopt. That's how I came into their lives." She paused, then looked at me. "Being their daughter, that's the greatest blessing I've ever had. But it didn't last long. My father passed away, and then my mother got cancer." Her voice softened. "It wasn't until then that I learned about you. George, I want you to understand something, she never forgot about you. Never. Everything she gave me, all the love, all the care, it was because of you. It was her way of making up for what she couldn't give you. She loved you. Her final wish was for you to live well, and for you to forgive her." "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I'm sorry I kept this from you for so long." I listened to every word, waiting for something inside me to snap, to break or erupt. But nothing came. Just calm. A strange, heavy calm I'd never felt before. "My condolences," I said flatly. Anna stared at me in disbelief. "That's all you have to say?" I paused, then shrugged. "Well, since we share the same mother, let's end this on a civil note. Let's get the divorce over with as soon as possible. George." She called my name, but the rest of her sentence never came. After a moment, she spoke again. "Are you still holding a grudge? She's gone, George. Can't you forgive her for the sake of the dead?" I exhaled slowly, a sharp breath to steady the weight pressing on my chest. "A grudge? Not really. If anything, it just feels cursed." "George, shut up." I let out a humorless chuckle. "Why? What do you want to hear? That I've forgiven her? That I loved her more than anything? That she was the best mother in the world and I'll spend the rest of my life cherishing her memory? Fine. If that's what you need to hear, I'll even say it at her grave if it makes you feel better. Now, can we please talk about the divorce? George. I know my name, Anna. You don't need to keep yelling it like I've forgotten who I am." She clenched her jaw, trying to keep her temper in check. "I get it, you need time. We don't have to rush this. When you've calmed down, we can talk." I waved her off. "No need. Let's get it over with now. Just tell me, what do you want? What do you need from me? Hell, I'll even go visit your mother's grave every year if that's what it takes. Just sign the papers and set me free." Every second I spent talking to her, every moment in the same room, made my skin crawl. It felt like biting into a sandwich and finding half a fly. And realizing the other half was already in my mouth. "I'm not divorcing you," she said quietly. "I promised my mother I'd take care of you." Perfect. So I'd swallowed the rest of the damn fly too. "Anna," I said, my voice cold, "I've held my tongue out of respect for the dead. But you're pushing me." She frowned, clearly uneasy. "You said your adoptive mother was extraordinary. That she built a cosmetics brand all on her own. But do you even know where her startup money came from?" Anna blinked, silent. "Anna doesn't know, but I do. That was my father's blood money. The compensation from his death. His entire paycheck, every cent, your mother took it all. Not a single dollar left behind. And when she left, she was so afraid my grandparents would try to stop her, she pretended to take me out for a walk, just to buy herself time. She dumped me behind a barn and disappeared. It was winter, Anna. I almost died in that barn. No, no, that's not true, Anna said instinctively, shaking her head in denial. I went on, my voice low but steady. I don't hate her. I just hate how much energy I wasted thinking I should. To me, she's nothing, just a stranger who happens to be biologically tied to me. But you keep insisting she loved me, that she cared, that she felt guilty for what she did. Well then, where was she when I was out in the fields with my grandparents, breaking my back just to make ends meet? Where was she when they died and I had no one, when people came after me, threatened me? Where was she when I was bullied so badly I nearly took a knife and ended it all? Where was she when, in my sophomore year, every cent of my tuition and living expenses was stolen? I was standing on a rooftop, ready to jump, and where was she then? What's the point, Anna? If there's no emotion, she's a stranger. If there is, then she deserves to rot in hell. Every word I said drained the color from Anna's face. We didn't know, she whispered. We didn't know. My mother wanted to make it right, George. She just didn't know how to face you. I let out a bitter laugh. How noble of her. Living in comfort and luxury while letting this grain of sand keep grinding at her conscience. Poor woman, must have been torture for her. That's not what I meant. Anna blurted, desperate to explain. But clearly, she wasn't someone who knew how to explain anything well. A wave of anger surged in my chest, so strong it made my head ache. I rubbed at my temples, trying to hold myself together. You people are unbelievable. Because they feel guilty about me, they compensate you for their guilt towards me. Shouldn't the compensation go to the person who actually suffered? She got cancer, and just to ease her conscience before dying, she dumped all the guilt and responsibility on you. That way, she could die with peace of mind. And you, what? You wanted to repay a debt, carry out some mission, so you married me. God, what a joke. I looked at Anna, half curious, half exhausted. Tell me, why did you think marrying me was the best way to make things right? Did you think I couldn't find a wife on my own? Honestly, you would have done me a bigger favor if you just handed me a check. Anna, let's just get divorced. I'm her biological son, there are medical records, birth certificates, all of it. If you won't settle this amicably, I'll take you to court and fight for my share of the inheritance. That day, I talked endlessly, just poured it all out. Aside from a few words at the beginning, Anna stayed quiet the entire time, just sitting there and listening. We both knew there was no turning back. Divorce wasn't a question anymore, it was inevitable. I waited 3 days. Then she finally agreed. This time, she drafted the divorce agreement herself. She gave me most of her assets, shares in the company, other things I didn't bother to read through. None of it mattered to me. My therapist once said my biggest issue was desire, or rather, the lack of it. I didn't crave anything. Not success. Not money. Not even comfort. It made sense, really. I had no one behind me. No one ahead of me. He asked me once, what's the one thing you want most? You need to find that, something worth wanting. Because without it, he said, I'd lose the will to live. I thought about it for a long time. Then I told him, I just want to be loved. That's why I worked so hard, why I tried to live better, become better. I wanted someone to love me. But Anna ruined that. She ruined those 5 years. I hated her for it, but I couldn't bring myself to truly despise her. I couldn't let her leave that kind of scar on my heart. I had to remind myself, at the very least, she once helped me. Whatever her reasons, she did pull me out of a dark place. All I needed now was to let her go. Cut the ties. That's what my therapist always said. You have to tear away everything that's dragging you down, and walk forward without looking back. The ones who love you, they're waiting ahead. Anna and I finalized our divorce at the courthouse. A month later, I received the divorce certificate. I decided it was time to leave this city behind. Henry left too. Before he went, he said, "What a joke. All these years I couldn't let her go, and in the end, it wasn't even worth it." Makes you wonder, did I waste all those years on nothing? Guess I fed all my feelings to the damn Anna. Anyway, I owe you an apology for getting involved in your life. I'm sorry. I didn't forgive him. But I didn't hate him either. He was just another passerby in the wreckage of this chapter of my life. He tripped me up, knocked me down, left me covered in dust. But I dusted myself off. Got back on my feet. Because I still had somewhere to go. I don't look back. A real man never does.
It wasn't until George left the city that Anna truly began to understand him. To her, he had always been just an obligation, a debt to repay. She thought marrying him, giving him money and resources, was enough. George had always been more of a symbol in her mind than a real person. Thinner than paper, vague and weightless. She had never seen him prepare stomach medicine for her late at night. She never noticed the little jokes he cracked just to make her smile. She never saw the hope in his eyes, or the quiet disappointment that followed. She'd made him spend 5 years with someone who was practically blind. No wonder it all ended in bitterness. 3 months after George disappeared, Anna learned he'd been seeing a therapist all along. The therapist didn't reveal much, confidentiality of course. But he said, "Living has never been easy for George. But he fights for it, every single day. He's one of the strongest patients I've ever had." From that day on, Anna began searching for him. Not to intrude on his life. She just wanted to know, was he okay? A year later, she finally found him. In a small, quiet town. The kind you could miss if you blinked. But he wasn't alone. He was holding the hand of a toddler who was just learning to walk. That moment hit her like a punch to the chest. Her face went pale. That night, she booked the earliest flight she could find and flew straight to the city. She saw him again. He was tanner, thinner, but there was a gentleness in him that hadn't been there before. When George spotted her, surprise flickered across his face. "Long time no see," he said. For the first time, Anna was at a complete loss for words. "Yeah, long time," she echoed softly. Her gaze kept drifting to the child at his side. "You got married?" she asked. George gave a dry, amused laugh. "I'm not that powerful, and I wouldn't do such a disgusting thing." Then he said, "He's adopted. An orphan." Anna felt her heart rise, then crash down again. And for the first time in a long while, she finally let out a breath. There was a strange, overwhelming sense of relief, like she'd narrowly escaped disaster. In that moment, she understood something she hadn't dared admit to herself before. She still hoped that somehow, somewhere down the line, she and George could find their way back to each other. She loved George. But George said, "I'm never getting married again." And just like that, Anna felt tears welling up in her eyes. What had she really done all these years? What had she ruined? "Can I still come visit you sometimes?" she asked softly. "See the kid?" George shook his head. "Better not. Otherwise I'll have to move again. It's a hassle." That hit harder than anything else. Anna's heart sank deeper. A wave of loneliness crashed over her, sharp and suffocating. She didn't want to leave. She wanted to buy a house nearby, stay close, just to be in his world, even from a distance. But she knew she couldn't. She had no right to. All she could do was say goodbye. "Take care," she whispered. George smiled faintly and said politely, "Live a good life, and don't meet again in the future." And just like that, he was gone. A week after Anna had appeared, George packed up and left again, with the child in tow. No warning. No note. It was his way of making it clear, don't look for me again. Don't try to follow. When Anna heard the news, she drank all night alone. The pain in her stomach was unbearable, sharp enough to bring tears. But the person who used to make her medicine was gone. This time, gone for good. She didn't try to search for George again. She only hoped, wherever he went, however far, he would find happiness.